Hello, everybody. Good afternoon to everybody on the West Coast, and if you're watching and you're on the East Coast, good evening. Today I'll keep it short and sweet, and we're going to talk about that tight end. Been doing some research as to some of the draft prospects and some of the current tight ends that we have here with our 49er faithful. Number one being George Kittle, who just last year was signed to a $75 million contract and is good until 2026. And as long as he stays healthy, he will not disappoint. So yeah, we're going to talk about this. So now we need tight ends that have, how was it said? Team-friendly contracts. Sounds pretty cheap. Maybe it's the nicer way than saying cheap, but yeah. So like Russ Welly, he had him an example of a team-friendly contract, making about over $1 million. Not very much at all, but considering his stats that he's played with us, he doesn't really have much to actually clap about. Considering his career record from 2018 to 22 is 43 catches, 506 yards, only averaging almost 12 yards and only 5 touchdowns. Not the best, considering when you have somebody like George Kittle, who does make a person very happy with a career of 31 touchdowns, coming to us at 2017, but does have a rap sheet for some injuries. And that right there kind of makes you think and wonder, when are we going to get somebody that can get help for George Kittle? Somebody who can come in with a team-friendly contract, obviously, because they don't want to spend any good money, but somebody who can complement George Kittle as far as when he needs a break to sit on the bench because he's tired. We don't have to hold our breath because the second string's coming in and we're like, God forbid, because we don't want any of that. There's been too much of that. And the main thing is we want our guys to stay healthy and consistent. Even if that means number one needs a break and number two comes in. And sure, you're not as elite as number one, but, number two should be just as great. So there are some prospects in the draft that I have been looking at. Not too many, but the one that's definitely caught my eye, his name, Luke Schoonmaker, very interesting. Coming out of Notre Dame, or no, I'm sorry, Michigan. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. It's coming out of Michigan, 6'5", 251 pounds. Don't really know if the 40-yard dash means anything, but comes in at a 4.63. So that's decent. 22 record. He had 11 games, 34 catches, 386 yards, but only 3 touchdowns. So 3 touchdowns doesn't seem like a lot, especially when you're playing 11 games. Maybe that's just me having wishful thinking of, maybe you should get at least 1 touchdown per game. But that's just a fan. Doesn't necessarily reflect how we have with Kittle. And he doesn't necessarily compliment Kittle, but he would kind of be one of those prospects where, you pull him off the bench for number 2 and he gets thrown in the game. He's not going to be one of those ones that kind of makes you worry too much. He's not number 1 in the prospects of the top 10 draft class for the 2023 tight ends. Michael Mayer, I believe, from Notre Dame is the gentleman who's at number 1 on that list, preceded by Darnell Washington from Georgia. Those are the other 2 prospects that I would definitely like to see as far as potential. Maybe they'll come in with team-friendly contracts because they are draft prospects. They're not somebody that's a free agent who's already had an established contract and who wants to get paid, even though they're a free agent and was let go from their team for whatever reason. But George Kittle, we want to see him stay healthy. Many of his injuries didn't seem to be as severe. So, he's out a game or 2. He was put on the inactive roster for, I think, twice throughout his entire season. He's played through some of his injuries. Nobody ever recommends that. But if, hey, you choose to, you want to take that chance, the team does appreciate that because for the simple fact that we're relying on you and we definitely want to win the game at the end. but we don't want to lose you for any longer because now you've added more injury to that injury. So we definitely want to see the strength stay up, want to see the health stay nice. But yeah, Luke Shoemaker, Michigan, he's a okay run blocker. His cons, from what I've read, is that he might need a year to work into a full-time tight end 2 position. So that kind of makes me wonder, would he even be one that you'd be willing to pick up from the draft, considering anybody that we pick up from the draft this year, we're going to want to rely on as soon as possible because we are trying to make it to the Super Bowl and we are trying to win a Super Bowl. So potentially anybody we add to the roster this year, we're going to want to make sure is ready to win because that's what everybody's initiative is to get to the Super Bowl and to win it. There's been too many years that we've got very close and just bust, didn't make it. So I don't know, Shoemaker, he seems okay. I don't try to pay attention to too much of the pros and cons, but some of his strengths are he's got some serious agility. He protects the ball when he's about to get hit. That's important because, fumbles are another thing that plague the Niners sometimes is if a receiver doesn't hold on to that ball, we end up losing it. And that sucks. Nobody likes to see the Niners fumble the ball because we really know that, that team's going to grab the damn ball and run it in for a touchdown normally with our luck. Shoemaker has got timing and body control for catching outside his frame. He's good for short area foot quickness and footwork, runs precise routes. He's got deep speed, and he's got a natural feel for setting up defensive backs to create separation. So that sounds like he'd be able to at least make a play. But the only problem with his issue was that he might need that year to work into a number 2 tight end. He doesn't fight for the ball, where, for example, you'd see George Kittle running between 3 defensive linemen or cornerback or whatever, and he makes the play, even catching the ball one-handedly, not afraid to get hit. So we definitely want somebody who's not so stiff and not afraid to get hit with the ball, and somebody who can actually protect the ball so that when you do take a hit, you can go down nicely without getting injured or without losing the ball. So Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, he seems to have 3 years of his college career, has 180 catches, 2,099 receiving yards with 18 touchdowns. He is number 1 on the draft class list for 2023. He maintains stride and speed through route turns. He is fast, I should say. It meets the defender to gain positioning, so he keeps up with the defender. That makes it nice. Rarely disabled by route catch conflict. Plays big at times to win contested catch. So it sounds like this gentleman can definitely make a play happen. But some of his weaknesses are that he's sluggish. He's got a sluggish release and acceleration off the line, so he's not taking off as quickly with a burst. He looks a little stiff when he's reaching outside of his frame to make a catch. He's below average for his run after a catch, so he's not elite or anything. And he doesn't get into the block with quicker hands. So that a lot of times with a tight end, you want to see them very quick because where obviously you're not relying on your wide receiver, who is supposed to be quick at the deep pass. You'd hope that your tight end can pick up that speed too, because once you get the ball, for instance, in the middle, you're shooting the gap and you're trying to run it all the way in for the touchdown. Because again, we're trying to win a Super Bowl. We're not trying to play flag football. And we'll go down to, let's see, Darnell Washington out of Georgia Bulldogs. Also has started 2020 all the way to 2022, 6'7", 270 pounds, 4.64 40-yard dash, 1.57 seconds for a 10-yard split. Sounds pretty quick. Not an expert, so I can't really break it down as to what that exactly means, except for it sounds like, he runs his 10 yards, and it sounds like he's going to be quick at trying to either turn to find out where that ball is, because hopefully it's coming to him, and he's going to do something about it. He has power and drive blocking abilities off a tackle. He's a great run blocker, great pass blocker. He easily handles blitzing linebackers on the edge, so that's pretty nice to know. Quick speed, an open field runner. So anybody who's quick at the tight end position, like Kittle sometimes is, it's nice to know that for the simple fact that's what we need. Again, anybody that is going to get on this roster, we're looking at contention to winning the Super Bowl. We don't want projects. We've got enough of those. Doesn't mean that they're a problem, but because we already have projects, we're working on them. We don't want to take any more time into working with many more projects for the simple fact that we want to win. We're tired of sitting back waiting decade after decade, waiting to get to a Super Bowl, and people in the Rams fans communities talking crap about the Niners because the Niners haven't won a Super Bowl, even though it's pretty funny that the Rams say anything because they just only recently, after like 20 years, won their 2 Super Bowls, but whatever. So weaknesses for Darnell Washington. He does not make an effort to create separation. And his average long speed, he's got no second gear to threaten the top defense. So it sounds like he slows down a little bit. Maybe he kind of gives up. Maybe his confidence level isn't as up there as we'd like to see. He's only been targeted 45 times in his 3 years of play. So I'm not exactly sure if that is over or under from what your typical starting tight end should be achieving. And he's only a short range threat. So although sometimes that's not bad because we see Kittle, he can run, a couple yards out, catch the ball in the middle, and then dart into an end zone that's 40 yards away. But sometimes that's not a big deal. And these stats don't necessarily mean anything until you actually see them working with the offense that we're working with, because who knows, maybe the offense that the Niners can put out for these tight ends can turn into something better than what they've been able to achieve in their college careers. And last but not least, another gentleman by the name of Sam Laporta. He comes out of Iowa. 6'3", 245 pounds, 4.59 40-yard dash with a 1.59 second 10-yard split. So that's not as fast as Darnell Washington, but almost as quick. He has the ability to threaten zone coverage, so that's always a good thing. He will make basic catches. That can go either way. It's like, all right, so you catch the ball. Can you make a play? We don't know until we see it. And he has average starter potential. So he's not like Schoonmaker, for instance, where they're saying he might need to sit on the bench for a year to kind of get back into the skill to become a second tight end. Sam Laporta seems to be almost ready to be tight end number 1. So he doesn't seem to be like he'd be too hard to work with, considering that fact there is he's almost there. Just put him in whatever scheme they find would work best for him, and we'll see how he shines. The only difference with him, some of his weaknesses, he lacks some ball skills in more challenging catch situations. So I don't know if that is because he's afraid to get hit or doesn't see how to make the play. Might not have the confidence as far as, you see 3 defensive linemen coming after you and you're trying to make the catch, and you just kind of stop. He has run blocks with inconsistent positioning. So I don't know if that's just, again, a confidence thing, like he's not understanding where his footwork needs to be or the play, where you're going, where you should go, or maybe you don't know where to be. But again, something that he can work with Shanahan and his offense, and maybe that's all they need is get under a great coach who can potentially help you find your way and your confidence level into becoming a tight end that can complement Kittle. Kittle, he definitely needs some help. I was doing some history research as far as his NFL injuries, and his rap sheet dates back to his starting year for, hamstring sprains, ankle sprains, shoulder injuries, knee injuries, again, a hamstring in the thigh, knee, foot, leg, calf sprain, knee, groin. So some of these things definitely stop the tight end from running, and that kind of slowed him down, as we can see in some of his years, where 2017 he didn't start off too strong, but again, that was his rookie year. And then, even 2018 and 2019, although he didn't have 11 touchdowns like he did in 2022, he was able to get 1,377 yards in 2018 and 1,053 yards in 2019. So he was able to have some great years as far as the yards that he's gained, and he also had better receiving yards and catches then. But touchdowns are nice too. Even though you didn't necessarily get the yards or the catches that you did in previous years, you made up for it later on by running it in the end zone more often. And that's what we need to see, is running it in the end zone. Team-friendly contracts, running it in the end zone, and not wasting money on Ross Dwelley. No offense, because I am a true fan of Ross Dwelley. When I see him come out there on the field for his little bits and pieces, it's like, oh, great, he did a play. But at the end of the day, he's just a ghost. You don't even know he's out there until he does something, and he doesn't do much. He only has 5 touchdowns, which are great. They do go noticed. It's not like they're unnoticed, because anytime we get a touchdown, that just helps accelerate us getting to a better position where we're going to continue our winning path. And that's what I'd like to see this year with our tight ends. And with only a $3 million cap space to work with, and I'm hearing that it might cost about $100,000 for the draft class, that doesn't leave a lot of money to try and get anybody who are veterans, such as I can't think of the guy's first name, but his last name is Oliver, one of the top tight ends, super millions of dollars. Obviously, somebody definitely out of our reach. Can't even afford to window shop that one, but would be nice to have somebody like that on our team, because he would definitely complement Kittle. Or Kittle would make a great backup for him. Sorry, Kittle. But definitely looking forward to seeing the Niners be able to make something happen through this draft class, and definitely need another tight end, because only having one tight end that shines and 2 that are just mediocre, that are just kind of like, again, hold your breath. Oh God, don't fumble it, or hopefully you do something. And then hearing Jed York come out, wanting these players to have team-friendly contracts, that doesn't make you feel very good sometimes, because there's only so many times you can restructure somebody's contract, especially if you've already restructured them to try to make money to get these other players, to add to the offense, to add to the defense. There's not really much that we're going to have to do to add to the defense, because defense has been carrying the offense for many years now. But the offense definitely needs some adjusting, and they have definitely put some effort into the line, the offensive line, which makes it nice. Looking forward to seeing what the Niners are going to do with that. Quarterbacks, not really concerned with quarterbacks, because regardless of if Purdy's injured or nobody's for certain about Trey, we have 2 great quarterbacks we're working with. And Sam Darnold, third string, you're going to come in and compete, but you're still going to remain the third stringer. And if they do end up getting DTR, if I'm not mistaken, from the draft, then, DTR and him can battle it out for the third string position. But we do have our number 1. We do have our number 2. We don't have to go into, specifics as to who's going to start, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. I think the majority of us know who is going to start, and he started last year, so we'll see him start again this year. And if not, we know that we're going to see a lot of him, because he's definitely been the guy that we're relying on. And it's nice to know that we do have Brock Purdy, because at the end of the day, we don't want to go back to the days where we had Mullins, CJ Beathard, and Jimmy Garoppolo, or even going further than that. It's kind of funny. I was doing some reading in these articles, looking at the top 5 quarterbacks since Steve Young. And I don't want to be controversial, but the number 1 quarterback that's been the best quarterback since Steve Young is Jeff Garcia. And who do you think number 2 is? Some of you will be like, don't say his name. Yes, it is he who shall not be named, Mr. Jimmy Garoppolo. And I am very happy to see that he is not on the team. I'm not going to badmouth the guy because he has kept us in the position of getting close, but still we busted. So you definitely want to make sure that we get there, because it's not cool to continue on going to a Super Bowl and busting and losing an NFC championship. And oh gosh, yeah, there's been too many times of yelling at the TV. You know, Mom always said, don't yell at inanimate objects, but dang, I really wish that TV would hear me and make those guys play better when I yell at them. I'm going to go into the chat here and see who we have. Looks like we have Bryant. We have Niner Jess from East Coast Red and Gold podcast. Always check her show out. Great. They have a great panel. Ty Austin, Maddie B, Bex. We have Joe Stevens. Hey, Joe. Who we have? Ultimate 49er Reports. John J. Hey, hey. And let's see. Oh, Mom Life. Yeah, Mom Life is always busy. Yeah, it is. I'm actually lucky to be on here, and I told my oldest daughter, the 11-year-old, all right, you got to handle the fort because I'm going to need at least 15 to 30 minutes to be on this stream to talk about some tight ends. And so far, it's working. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here and talk about some tight ends, and looking forward to hopefully another breakout year for George Kittle. I also read that he has a football field in his backyard. That's really cool. Be able to get that workout in and have some guys come over and practice your routes without having to leave home. That's always comforting. But yeah, what do you guys think about these draft prospects for tight ends? And are there any prospects out there that are free agents that we potentially could afford, considering we're working with team-friendly contracts, whatever that may mean, except for it means cheap, dirt cheap. Are there anybody in this prospects of tight ends that could potentially be picked up by the Niners? When it comes to their picks, do the Niners look like they're going to be trading up to get potentially a tight end? Or are they going to try to save those for other needed pieces? Got David McNiner in the house. But yeah, I am definitely looking forward to this. And I don't know any more about all the other tight ends. There has been quite a few, actually. Let me see. I guess I should be a little bit more organized. Oh, here we go. Prospect tight ends. So top 10 tight ends for the draft prospects of 2023. Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame. Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Dalton Kincaid from Utah. Luke Musgrave from Oregon State. Tucker Kraft from South Dakota. Sam Laporta from Iowa. Luke Schoonmaker from Michigan. Brenton Strange from Penn State, Josh Whyle, Whyle from Cincinnati, and Cameron Latu from Alabama. So I've only looked at the number 1, the number 2, and the number 6 and number 7 to kind of give you a top tier, middle tier. Don't really look at too much of the bottom tier. If I had to pick, it would definitely seem like the gentleman from Iowa, Sam Laporta, seems pretty nice. Maybe I'm sold because he's average starter potential. I don't want to have anybody come in to back up Kittle and them not be ready for a year, because I don't want to see Kittle injured. But with the way that they seem to be running our guys, our veterans, you never know. And I don't want to speak this into existence because that would be the worst thing to happen. But it would be definitely nice to know that we have somebody who can get Kittle out of trouble, somebody who can definitely make plays happen and not have to sit here and wonder if we're going to be going back in the dark again, because we definitely seem to be having we have a team that wants to win. We have core players. We lost a few of them, and that kind of sucks, but I don't know. I guess we'll see when the season starts how that's going to impact the team, such as Jimmy Ward and couple other people. Honestly, not going to necessarily miss Mike McGlinchey. He did seem to get a little sluggish there, kind of like with the missed tackles, missed blocks, being ran through, ran over, body slam. Like, oh my gosh, come on, dude. So that kind of is worrying because he used to be big. When Joe Staley came in, you know, I remember there was a thing coming out. They were calling McGlinchey cheeseburger. Poor guy. But then he started losing all that weight, and the next season he came out and he looked almost like he was half the size that he was. So that kind of makes everything seem a little crazy. And I wonder if that's why he got ran through the way he did closer to the end of his career. And then he got priced out. Like that contract of his, I mean, Broncos picked him up for that big old price tag. All right, we'll see how that goes. And thankfully, we don't have to worry about him. But I think we have our right tackle situation handled. So I'm looking forward to seeing these different upgrades to our team. Definitely the tight end position. But yeah, I think I'm going to end my show on that. Unless anybody has anything else to say to end. Any ideas as to potentially who might be somebody they want to see help George Kittle? And when I say compliment, who would you think could compliment? Are there any actual prospects who could in fact compliment George Kittle that are available, that aren't too expensive for us to actually achieve? 11 picks in the draft. We'll see. Not too sure, but I'm hoping for the best. But thanks for everybody who is here in the chat, and stay tuned for more content. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. And I know Niner Jess from East Coast Red and Gold, she's going to be having her birthday bash today. So check out East Coast Red and Gold, 5 o'clock tonight on Pacific Standard Time, and check that out. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and look out for the next notification when Tony Culp goes live. Thanks, guys. Go Niners.